With Ben McKee, Brent Hubbs, Volquest.com, we go around the horn on this Saturday afternoon as Tennessee completes the sweep over Mississippi State. 10-5 sets their sights on a Wednesday matchup in the SEC tournament. Ben, let's put a bow tie on this weekend. What are your two or three biggest takeaways from Tennessee this weekend overall?
Yeah, I think first and foremost, it's Tennessee's two best pitchers finally asserting themselves. I think when everybody is pitching at their absolute best, I think Chase Dollander and Blake Tidwell are Tennessee's two best. And if Tennessee is going to win the national championship, I think it's going to be because those two pitched to their absolute potential. And you saw that this weekend. They were dominant, and you saw a rejuvenated Chase Burns. Drew Beam struggled a little bit with his command. I just worry that he's really hit that freshman wall because he didn't pitch his junior or senior season in high school. But again, not a lot of pitches today. I believe he finished on 37. So back-to-back weekends of not a lot of work for him. So maybe that helps him going into the postseason. But the pitching was really good. Camden Sewell had some bad luck today. He was really the only bad outing, if you want to call it that. But he got baseballed, in my opinion. I mean, 4 straight singles, and all of them were softly hit. He was making great pitches. Evan Russell told me after the game that he had the best stuff of anybody today, and State was just able to put the barrel on it and flick it out there for some hits. And if that's your worst pitching performance of the weekend, then you're not complaining too much. So the pitching staff was dominant. They're going to be the guys that's going to have to lead Tennessee to a national championship. And I know that sounds crazy because of what this offense is. And the offense is my second takeaway. There was a little bit of concern, I guess, if you want to call it that, maybe nitpicking more than anything, Brent. But the offense, man, whether it's this warm weather, whether it's the fact that school's over with and they don't have to worry about that, or they're just simply that great that they put on a show this weekend. Maybe struggled for the first 7 innings of game 2, but the pitching and the hitting, it was a complete weekend for Tennessee. Didn't play bad defense other than the Luke Lipschitz error right here, and Will Mabry didn't necessarily do the greatest job of covering the bag, but the base running was really good. The defense was good. So combining all of those, I would just say it's a real complete weekend for Tennessee in Starkville.
All right, let's talk about today's game. Tennessee wins 10-5, and once they answered Mississippi State's start, it felt like State was probably going to end up being done because their season was over. But what was the pitching strategy today? When you talked to Tony Vitello, what were they trying to get? What were they trying to get done today? Obviously, they ran through a lot of guys, wanted to get some guys work. Was everybody on a hard pitch count? Kind of what was the thought process of going through today to finish up this weekend set?
To get guys work. He didn't explicitly say that, but I think you can kind of, connect the dots just with all of the guys that hadn't had really pitched yet because Chase Dollander was so good, Blake Tidwell was so good. You did use Redmond Walsh early in the series, but he was able to come back today and pitch. There were a lot of guys who had not pitched yet that needed to pitch today. And granted, he wasn't going to force everybody in to pitch, but Drew Beam starts and didn't have the greatest command. So you don't want to overtax him. But you also still want to try to win the game. So you go to Ben Joyce in the 3rd inning. Joyce, his command was a little spotty today, and Kirby Canal has to come in and get Tennessee out of a bases-loaded jam, and does so with back-to-back ground balls to third base. And Trey Lipscomb made 2 great plays on each play. And then Kirby just absolutely shoved. I mean, that was the best Kirby has looked all season. After getting Tennessee out of that jam, he comes in and pitches 2 scoreless innings, didn't allow a run, a hit, or a walk in his 2.2 innings. Will Mabry, Tony Vitello commented and said that he looked really good aside from the home run that he gave up. And then Camden Sewell, I talked about him, just some tough luck for him. And then Redmond Walsh looked like Redmond Walsh to close out the game. So you had to get some guys work today, still try to win the game, not overtax guys, and just really set it up for Hoover. And I think Tennessee's pitching staff is in a great spot heading into Hoover starting Wednesday.
Kirby Canal is fascinating to me because he'll go like 2 or 3 weeks and not pitch, it seems like, and then he comes out. And the last couple of times he's been out, he's been absolutely terrific. What is his role for this team heading into the postseason, Ben?
I didn't really hear what you asked because I just got sprayed by dirt or whatever they're spraying out of that thing. I know you asked about Kirby and I think his role, and I think it is what it is today. He said last week when he spoke to the media that he's a lefty specialist, that he's going to have to come in and get a guy out that's a lefty, and Tony brought him in today to face the lefty. He got him out, and because he looked so good, he stayed in there. He's Redmond Walsh 2.0 to me. He doesn't overpower you, but he fills up the strike zone. He throws a bunch of junk, and he's just a competitor. And he goes out there, and there's going to be times where guys hit him because he doesn't have overpowering stuff. But I think he's a mini Redmond Walsh, and I don't mean that in a disrespectful way to Kirby to minimize what he is. But I think he is better than maybe people realize because he hasn't had to pitch a lot this year because Tennessee just has an embarrassment of riches. So I think the main role for him is that he's a lefty specialist. If Tennessee's in a jam and there's a lefty up, I think they'll bring him in to pitch. And he's not – I'd be surprised if you see him go 2.2 innings again this season. That's not really his role, in my opinion. It's going to be to get the lefty and maybe a guy or two after that.
All right, we'll wrap this thing up before you get sprayed down with fertilizer or whatever they got going on behind you there. Offensively, we talked about a lot of runs being scored. Drew Gilbert's been good for a long time for Tennessee. He was terrific this weekend, 7 of 11, 3 doubles, 2 home runs, 6 RBIs. That's a nice way to round yourself into postseason play. There were a lot of good hitters, but he really roped the baseball and looked as dialed in as he's been in a while.
Not so sure why Mississippi State's so concerned with their field right now, considering today was the final game of the season. But yeah, Drew Gilbert, he left his mark on this field and at the stadium. So I guess you got to repair what Drew Gilbert was able to do damage to all weekend long. And I think he's the best hitter on this baseball team, Brent. I know everybody talks about Jordan Beck, and rightfully so. And Trey Lipscomb's going to win the SEC Player of the Year, or at least he deserves to. Jarrell Ortega, he's had a phenomenal year. You can go on and on. Says he has great hitter after great hitter after great hitter. I think that Drew Gilbert is by far the best. He comes through in the clutch. He hits to all fields. He hits for power. He starts rallies. He comes through in the clutch, as we well know. I just think he's the most well-rounded hitter on this team, and it continues to show. And he only has, I think, 8 home runs now after the weekend. And don't let that fool you. He has as much pop in that bat as anybody. And if he had not had that hamstring injury at the beginning of conference play, he'd have far more than 8 home runs. So he was awesome. And Tennessee's going to go as Beck, Gilbert, and Lipscomb go. And Lipscomb had a big home run today, and Gilbert really did most of the lifting this weekend. I continue to think Beck's not in the slump that his stats may indicate. I mean, even today, I think he finishes 1 for 4, and he was spraying balls all over the field, just right at guys. He was on it today. So Drew Gilbert, he's going to carry this offense. I talk about Blake Tidwell and Chase Dollander carrying the pitching. I think Drew Gilbert's going to have to carry this offense.
Well, Tennessee got plenty of people to help them carry this weekend as they go to Starkville, Mississippi, and do something they haven't done in a long time, and do something that doesn't happen quite frequently in Starkville, Mississippi. And that's get a sweep. They end Mississippi State's season, and Tennessee now turns its sights on what everybody's been talking about for months, and that's the postseason. It starts in Hoover on Wednesday. We got full coverage of the win, full coverage of Tennessee getting ready for SEC tournament play, and much more at Volquest.com. That's going to do it for this edition of Around the Horn. He's Ben McKee. I'm Brent Hubbs. Have a great rest of your weekend, everybody.